All right, we're going to get today's webinar started. As I said, hello, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Nick Kaza, and I work on energy and sustainability programs at the National League of Cities. Today, we are going to explore community solar and how it can benefit local governments, their residents, and utilities. We have a full house today with 5 great presenters. Nadav Enbar, a principal project manager at the Electric Power Research Institute, will kick things off. We should then be hearing from Jared Leader, the manager advisory services at the Smart Electric Power Alliance. And we'll follow that up with 3 case studies, one from a city perspective with Brian Newton at the city of Fremont, Nebraska. We'll then get a perspective from a solar developer, Betsy Glynn, Senior Director for Community Solar at Blue Wave Solar. And finally, we'll hear from the utility segment, Eric Van Orden, the strategic segment team lead, renewables and choice programs at Excel Energy. Before we get started with the presentations, I'd just like to review some webinar details. This webinar is being recorded. All attendees are muted and will be throughout the webinar. After our speakers have concluded their presentations, we will have time for a brief Q&A. Please submit questions to the organizer through the question feature in GoToWebinar, or you can email them to me at kaza@nlc.org. This webinar is brought to you by the SolSmart program. SolSmart is funded by the U.S. Department of Energy Solar Energy Technology Office with a goal of designating at least 300 communities as a SolSmart Bronze, Silver, or Gold community by October of 2020. As I said, SolSmart is a designation program. That is our end goal, is to achieve those designations. But we also provide in-depth technical assistance to local governments to help them achieve their initial level of designation, and then if they so choose, move on to a higher level of designation as well. Here's a quick look at a map of our SolSmart designated communities. We're close to all 50 states, but not quite there yet. So hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll be able to achieve that milestone. We currently have 248 designated communities, so very close to another milestone of 250. As I said, the SolSmart program provides assistance to help local governments enhance their solar markets, making it easier and more affordable for homes and businesses to install or access solar energy. Obviously, this also promotes local jobs, helps local governments achieve their climate and energy goals, and it can also improve internal processes and help them become more efficient and well-defined. And at the end of the day, if you are a SolSmart designated community, you also receive a great plaque that can be placed in City Hall or at a county administration building. With that, I'm going to pull up the slides for our next presenter, Nadav at EPRI, and turn it over to him.
Awesome.
Nadav, you can go off mute. All right.
Excellent.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks for the intro, Nick, and thanks to everybody for joining us here for the next hour and a half or so to talk through community solar. As the first speaker up, really, I'm going to take my time, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, to provide you with a bit of a foundational understanding of the community solar concept so that we can kind of get everybody up to speed on the basics of community solar and its various contexts. And then as we move through the webinar agenda, we will be able to hear more from our other speakers who will be adding their nuanced perspectives. Next slide. Okay, so I want to define really during my time what this thing called community solar is and why many feel it offers benefits to multiple stakeholders, the so-called holy grail that is a win-win. And I'll also give a bit of an overview on the community solar market, the policy supports that have proven to be helpful to the community solar development, and then also talk very briefly about the core business model approaches that have emerged in the community solar space. So let's get started. Next. What is community solar? Let's start with a basic definition, and really, as the name suggests, it represents a community-oriented approach to providing a broader population of end users with the option to go solar. So maybe you've heard it referred to as a solar garden or a shared renewable energy plant. But community solar, as the diagram depicts here, is really, it's an arrangement where businesses and residents can buy or lease panels in a shared solar array, similar to maybe a concept of a community garden, if you've heard or participated in that before. And so customers can offset their electricity use and then receive credits on their electricity bill, either in the form of money or energy. And these credits are equal to the amount of generation produced by their share of the solar system. So the concept really works as if, the PV panels or the system were physically located on a subscriber's rooftop or on the property somewhere, but in fact, it's entirely virtual. Next slide. So we'll see in a minute the rising popularity of community solar is really tied to the multiple benefits it can provide to different stakeholders. And you can see the three core stakeholders that I want to briefly summarize here who are benefiting from participation in community solar. We'll start on the left here with consumer benefits. And number one really is all about access. We're all aware of the tremendous growth that's happened in the United States and really around the world related to the overarching growth of solar. In the U.S., it's since 2010, it's grown 10x. But that being said, an estimated 50 to 75% of U.S. consumers, that's businesses and households, they just can't access solar through the traditional means that it's offered, either because maybe they don't have a roof that they own, they're renters or they're apartment dwellers, or there might be some technical restrictions like their roof space is unsuitable to be able to support a system, or there might be shading that undermines the power production of a system. So really, because of its virtual nature, community solar can overcome these types of obstacles. And when we think about things from an economics perspective, there are a number of issues that community solar can also overcome vis-a-vis, or compared to, rather, I should say, the alternative of investing in a project on its own on a property. Now, it kind of depends on the program design, but community solar can reduce the upfront cost of going solar through scale economies, for example. You can get lower installations and operations and maintenance costs in that way. And you can also get higher energy production on a per kW basis compared to maybe an individual distributed rooftop system. You can also spread the costs around to multiple subscribers of a program, which can lower the upfront cost, investment cost of a solar's development. And finally, there's a way to hedge your costs and your risks if you subscribe to a program for 10 years on at a fixed price, let's say, that might in the future be lower than your retail electricity price. Very briefly, other issues involve flexibility in terms of being able to unsubscribe if you need to move out of a jurisdiction, or you, for another reason, would like to transfer your subscription to somebody else. And there's issues of customer equity, in which you can even target programs to provide solar access to low to moderate income customers who might live in depressed communities. If we move again now to the right to utility benefits, there are a number of customer engagement, customer relations issues that are beneficial to the utility, in which these companies can proactively really respond to increasing demand from their customers for more solar options, right? And they can do this in a way where they can not just retain customers, but do so in a more controlled way, right? For example, they can enroll customers in programs, community solar programs, that can be cost recovered or maintained through price premiums. There's a number of different financial arrangements that can be enacted. Again, back to the notion of model flexibility, utilities can also structure these programs in a number of different forms to help meet different types of mandates, or to do so in a way that is most easily manageable. From a siting perspective, they can also work with developers to strategically place PV systems in locations that can benefit the distribution grid and maybe defer or avoid the cost of upgrades in different areas on the grid. And now very briefly, moving one more to the right, are developer benefits. You can see the four bullets that I put here, and it really comes down to lowering the cost of customer acquisition by partnering with utilities, for example, being able to expand their roles in the development of solar in terms of the responsibilities that are undertaken to develop a community solar program. We're going to be hearing more about that from some of our speakers, and also in terms of the diversification issue for a developer portfolio, which can be helpful given the ups and downs of the PV market. Next slide. So as mentioned, given all the benefits I just talked about, it's really not that surprising that community solar has been growing in the United States. And this is a snapshot of the cumulative community solar installs, this one from GTM Wood Mac, and this is as of the first quarter of 2018. And as you can see, according to this data, 933 megawatts have been installed to date. And this has really been driven in large part by policy commitments in states like Minnesota, Massachusetts, and where I live here in Colorado. Now, these new community solar deployments have really grown at a rapid pace, just to put this in context, where over the last 5 years, the compound annual growth rate has been over 50%. That's almost double the overall growth rate of solar across the country. So that's a really healthy outlook. But that being said, it's also notable to state that community solar still has a lot of headroom for growth. That growth that has been experienced to date still only represents less than 2% of all the solar operating in the U.S. right now. And many of the barriers that have been encountered really stem from program design and market maturity issues rather than the inherent model itself. Next slide. Here's another snapshot of the community solar deployment picture, and this comes from SEPA, the Smart Electric Power Alliance. It's a little bit older as of end 2017, but I really want to just throw in the map on the left here because I think it's a really good illustration of the expanding geographic dispersion of community solar programs. And today, this is really as of end of 2018, there are 43 states plus the District of Columbia that have at least one community solar project online. So, that's come a long way since the very first community solar program was established back in 2006. But what this map helps to show is really the 19 states that also support or harbor community solar enabling policies that I'm going to talk about in just a minute that really provide better opportunities and market signaling for successfully scaling community solar. And although nearly every state that you see on this map, with the exception of a few, has a community solar project, it's important to note that these policy-enabled markets, these 19 states with these enabling policies, they account for over 70% of all of the community solar operating capacity in the country. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit more about these enabling policies for community solar. There are a lot of broader supports and incentives that are intended to aid development of solar. As we all know, you've got some stuff on the federal side. For example, the federal investment tax credit, which provides about 30% of deductions on the upfront cost of a solar energy array with a step-down schedule. You've got accelerated depreciation. You've got another number of things in terms of state-level initiatives related to renewables development, like renewable portfolio standards and potentially distributed generation and solar carve-outs, different remuneration arrangements like net metering and solar renewable energy credits, and standardized processes related to interconnection that are helping to streamline the ability to operate a system connected to the grid. Next, if you could click one, Nick. But I think it's important to note that these aren't unique to community solar. They're helpful. One more click. But there are three core enablers that we identify to really helping to bolster the community solar concept. And they're shared solar mandates, virtual net energy metering, and really in some cases, the notion of locational grid benefits. As the name suggests, really, shared solar program mandates are state laws that require utilities to offer some form of shared solar to their customers. This applies, I should say, just to clarify, to some utilities, not all utilities. And it's a little bit more of a stick incentive, so to speak. There's the remuneration method known as virtual net energy metering, and this billing mechanism is like net metering, but almost a 2.0 aspect, in which it allows bill credits earned through solar generation at one location to really be tied to an account that is physically sited at another location. And I mentioned locational grid benefits. Really, this is a bit more strategic in the sense of how siting of certain installations in areas of the grid that might be considered weak for accommodating two-way flows of power might be benefited from the installation of community solar. Next slide. So the next few slides that I want to briefly go through show the extent to which community solar enabling legislation has been enacted. And although the data really is somewhat well dated, this is as of 2016, it's still fairly accurate, and the maps are still quite illustrative of the national situation. I just want to plug that if anyone is interested, I really encourage you on the phone here to visit the database of state incentives for renewables and efficiency. The acronym is DSIRE. Their website, which is DSIREUSA, DSIREUSA.org, is a good place to be able to see if there are any updates on these related policies on a state-by-state basis. And really, this map is just conveying the states that support shared solar program mandates or piloted shared solar program mandates, and several years ago, certain states that had proposed these types of mandates. Go one forward, please. And here's a similar map that indicates the states that support a variation of virtual net energy metering. There are certain states that support VNEM, as it's known, for all customers. Others that do so in a little bit more limited fashion, in which eligibility of VNEM is really tied to, say, technology or utility type or customer classification. And then there's another category that is VNEM, in which utilities are allowed to offer the arrangement, but they're not obligated to do so. And then lastly, there are areas in which there's on-bill crediting, which is comprised of state laws that mandate that certain utilities credit an owner's or a subscriber's electricity bill for the amount of electricity that their share of a community solar project generates. One more slide, please. Finally, this is really just an example of VNEM, states that have VNEM and shared solar mandates. And unsurprisingly, it's in these states where we're seeing the vast majority of new community solar capacity be unlocked. Next slide. I'm going to just end now with one final slide on community solar models, which we're going to hear more about from our other speakers that follow me here. But suffice to say that there are various ways that customers can participate in community solar programs, along with a number of different program designs and variations. But essentially, it boils down to three main approaches: utility-sponsored approaches, special purpose entity approaches, and then nonprofit approaches, as summarized by this table here provided by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL. Really, in brief, utility-sponsored models are really, these are offered, as the name suggests, by utilities to provide their customers with the option to purchase solar from a shared facility or lease it. And this can be undertaken with the utility in the lead or working in partnership with a third party to own the array, develop it, administer the program, and then sell or lease shares accordingly. The special purpose entity model is really comprised of individuals or companies that join in a business enterprise to develop what amounts to a privately owned community solar project. And then, there's a partnership with utilities in which once the project has been constructed, then there is a number of different things that can be done to enable marketing and customer enrollment in the area. Lastly, there's the nonprofit model, which is really comprised of donors that contribute to a shared renewables installation owned by a charitable organization. There's lots of different variations here, and I'm going to let my following speaker, Jared Leader, talk a bit about now. And that is the conclusion of what I have to share. I guess we're going to hold questions, Nick, until the end.
Yep, we'll wait on questions until the end, and I will queue up the slides for Jared. Thank you very much for that, Nadav. I think that was an absolutely fantastic overview of community solar and some of the markets where community solar is active right now. Jared, if you're there, you can go off of mute.
Great, thanks. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can. Perfect.
Wonderful. So, that was a really good overview, and it really goes well into my presentation. I'm on the advisory services team at SEPA. I'm a manager here, and we have done a lot of community solar work, and we work with our members who are utilities and non-utilities. But two of the people on this call are actually members and are part of the working group, the community solar working group, which is a place where people come with new ideas and they share specifically around community solar problem areas and best practices to help organizations get community programs off the ground. And we did a fair amount of work with the US DOE, and which led to a lot of our community solar work. And specifically, you heard Nadav mention the model structure and the flexibilities that utilities like about community solar. A lot of the work that we've done is it goes into a deeper dive on the different program design structures, and not only with community solar, but where community solar lays with the rest of the renewable energy offerings. You can go to the next slide. And one thing that we've done at SEPA is we've looked at all the different types of renewable energy offerings that can be available to customers and that utilities offer to their customers. And you can start to see generally where the economic value lies, whether you're looking at the customer perspective or the utility perspective. Here, community solar offers a really interesting win-win, like Nadav said, and it allows residential and non-residential customers, smaller assets, local assets, multiple subscribers. But this is just a general overview of this more perhaps sophisticated renewable energy buyer, where green pricing, just paying a premium might not cut it. The customers want an economic benefit. So community solar offers that. Next slide. So as I mentioned, there's different model structures, and the three models that came up before with utility sponsored, third party, special entity, or nonprofit. This is just another way to think about it. The workshops that we've run with different utility and stakeholder clients, we generally break it into three categories. And the first being who's administering the program, who actually runs the program, who owns all the different assets. The next is the economics, and really, what is the subscriber's economic proposition to signing up to a community solar program? So anything from the credit they receive to the guarantee of generation that they might receive from their portion of the solar array, to the initiation fee and payment structure. I know Brian Newton from Fremont will be discussing some of the particulars on the subscriber payment structure and on their program, and I'll also go into a little bit more of this in our case study. So the third bucket here is target participation, and target participation. So really what the participation restrictions are, and this is an important component when designing to a specific type of customer class, whether it's a residential or commercial. A very popular and successful model is what's called the anchor tenant model, where you have a significant portion of the solar array subscribed by one larger commercial client, and the rest of the array is residential, which allows for some positive economic benefits for all. The fourth and final is really, the terms and conditions, asking around what are all the terms and conditions that apply. Pretty self-explanatory, but an important part of the decision tree. Next slide. So this is Austin Energy's program. I just did want to briefly note, I've picked out a few case studies, one in Austin Energy, and the next one is Georgia Power. But from the data that SEPA collected and that was illustrated in one of Nadav's slides, there is a mix and a diverse spread of community solar, but I think it is important to note that it is still an emerging top industry and a sector of solar. And of the data that we collected, 75% of the community solar was concentrated around Minnesota, Colorado, and Massachusetts, interestingly enough, because of some of that enabling policy that we see. But in Texas, Austin Energy, which is a municipal utility, they administer the program, but they also outsource some of the program billing and some of the IT to third parties. They are not the asset owner. They conducted a power purchase agreement with a third party developer. It was a 25-year PPA. We couldn't report the exact number, but it's roughly between $80 and $95 per megawatt hour. Interesting thing about this project, they actually co-located a 1.5 megawatt storage with the solar to help kind of shave some of the peaks. This is a subscriber model where the fuel price that customers typically paid, which was around 3 cents per kilowatt hour, was replaced with what they call the community solar adjustment. So instead of paying 3 cents per kilowatt hour on your bill, you're paying a 4.27 cents per kilowatt hour fixed cost. So the economic benefit here is you're going to hedge your fixed cost of electricity, anticipating that 3 cent power supply adjustment may rise in the future, and you're locking in something more consistent. They also have a component that is specifically for low moderate income. That's what LMI stands for, and that is 2.77 cents, which is significantly lower there. And this program, you can see on the side of how it broke down into the different program design elements. It's target customer class, it's all customers, and they hold the RECs to sell in the market. The next slide has a slightly different model. It's more traditional community solar model, where you have Georgia Power, the utility company, fully administering the program and owning all of the assets. And instead of having a per kilowatt hour payment, you actually have, as a customer and a subscriber, you have a block payment. For every kilowatt you subscribe to the community solar array, you pay roughly $25. And that is a monthly ongoing payment, along with a small upfront payment. And there are different models, variations where, contrary to this model, where you actually will pay all of the amount up front and you receive credits. In this case, you're having a monthly payment per block purchased. Different than Austin Energy, this is only for residential customers, and for several reasons, the utility retires the RECs on behalf of the participant. And this is important. I think this is important to note because as not only residential customers, but commercial customers become more renewable energy, favor renewable energy and prefer to purchase renewable energy, it's important for those customers to have the RECs retired on behalf of them in order to make those green energy claims. Next slide. So beyond some of the workshops that we've done with utility clients and stakeholders, we've also done some work designing programs and with several utilities here. And not only, a big component of designing programs is understanding what customers want, because really that if you remember the program design slide of economic proposition and the economics, that's driven by what the customers want, and how you design your program and how you lay out the subscription, whether it's monthly or an upfront payment, that's based on what your customers want. So the customer survey, portion is a really critical piece to the puzzle, as well as educating and marketing. A lot of people don't, they can't have what they don't want, and they don't know yet. So, educating and putting out marketing material around community solar is important. I know that Brian and Fremont had a very successful marketing and customer survey campaign. Next slide. So I'll leave you with this until questions, but the 5 major key takeaways that from our experience working from implementing and designing community solar, you start with project siting. It plays a key role in the overall success. It has significant impacts on both pricing and customer marketing, and confirming the system siting in the process will also help you avoid last-minute surprises and potential deal killers. So stakeholder engagement, the second piece here, it's all about embracing a collaborative design strategy. I mentioned it before, customer education and getting them to the table so they know what they're signing up for. The third is IT and billing coordination. Austin Energy was an example. They outsourced their billing because this is something that is still emerging, and having the tech support to support a community solar project is very important. Customers want to see their production, how crediting works on your bill. These are things that can easily be overlooked, but that have a significant cost to the project. The fourth is target market identification. I went over this in customer surveys, but oftentimes, there's a desire need for a particular market sector. They can range from viable solutions from solar for non-owner occupied homes, apartment dwellers. Low income customer access might be very important in your community. Putting the site within the community, perhaps by a school, that might be also something that you're looking at and considering. And the final thing is balancing and is risk. Understanding that you're building a site with generation, and how you design the program can handle risk, whether you subscribe per kilowatt or kilowatt hour, what you do with excess generation or unsubscribed generation, or oversubscribed generation. So these are all things to consider. And next slide, I think I leave you with a few resources to check out from SEPA. We have a full report that goes through the decision tree in more detail. That's the Community Solar Program Design Models report. Came out with 1 in 15, and then a version 2 late last year. And with that, I will put it on pause and let the next speaker come on in.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much, Jared. I think that built off of Nadav's presentation very well. We're going to turn our attention now to our case studies, and first up is going to be Brian Newton, the city administrator at the city of Fremont, Nebraska, talking about a very interesting community solar project that they've been able to implement there. All right, Brian, you can go off of mute.
Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Great. Hey, welcome everybody, and glad to be here. This is a picture of our first solar farm we built. It sits on about 10 acres. You can see the cooling tower next to it, so we've got a coal plant right next to this, so it's a good juxtaposition between renewable and conventional fuels. If you're not familiar with where Fremont is at, we're just west of Omaha, Nebraska. Population in Fremont is about 26,000 people. We are a full utility, meaning that we do water, sewer, electric, and natural gas. So as a utility, and I run both the city and the utility, so it's a little bit easier for us to make decisions, especially when we're talking about renewable energy and community solar. So what got us into this? Well, when I got here 4 years ago, we really didn't know what solar was. I had come from Indiana. We had started working a little bit on a solar project. I moved back. I'm from Nebraska originally. We moved back to Fremont and thought, I'm not sure community was solar. I'm not sure anything renewable would go in Fremont. It's pretty conservative Midwestern town. So I reached out and applied for a technical assistance grant from DOE. And I really wanted to look at a couple of things. I wanted to look at what model would fit best in Fremont. Should it be municipal owned? Should it be customer owned? Or should we go have a third party and just do a power purchase agreement and pass it on? I had some experience with all three models and really couldn't figure out. So I reached out and said, help us determine what do you think would be best. We also wanted to take a look at tax credits. As a municipal utility, we're not eligible for the tax credits. Maybe we should have passed those on to the customer. We also didn't get any investment tax credit or production tax credits. And so how could we pass those on? And so I think that NREL helped us do that portion of the study. We thought we got some really good information. And what I'll say is that we chose to be, our projects are municipal owned. We decided against a third party. We had the cash and we purchased and built the things ourselves. We also wanted to pass on the tax credits, and you'll hear in the future that we offer two options so the customer can take advantage of the IRS tax credits. At the same time, I reached out to SEPA, and you can go back, just a minute, go back. We reached out to SEPA and said, hey, help us figure out how we sell this to customers. How should we go about listening to see what the customers want? SEPA helped us do a survey, and it was fantastic. We had a very wide range of responses. We also did probably a dozen different community presentations about solar, trying to find out what people's interest in solar and community solar would be. All right, now next slide. And here's what we learned. First of all, like us, our customers did not really understand what community solar was all about. So we realized we had to do a lot of education. They certainly were price sensitive and wanted to make sure it was affordable. They didn't really want to pay a lot more than what they were currently paying. They wanted the billing to be virtual net metering, so it didn't matter where it was located. They were going to get the credit on their bill. They wanted a short term, but not too short, and so I think we structured something that fits them very well. Navav talked about flexibility. They wanted to be able to take the panels anywhere they go or take their shares anywhere they go in Fremont. We built that into our system. It was interesting, and this was a surprise, that some of them said, hey, listen, we'd like to own it so we can get the 30% tax credit. Initially, when we started out, I didn't really think that was going to be an option, but as you'll see in a minute, we worked that into our program, and it was pretty successful. And then the last thing with the tax benefits, we wanted to make sure that the RECs, the renewable energy certificates, could be used, and we've also worked that into our program. So next slide, please. This is the parameters of our program. So it's eligible to anybody that lives inside of Fremont, so anybody that's our utility customer can participate. It's completely transferable. In fact, it's so transferable that if you decide you don't want to participate, you can give your shares or sell your panels to your neighbor, to your friends. We don't care as long as somebody uses it in Fremont. We have two forms of participation, and I've got examples of these coming up. But first of all, we allow people to purchase their own panel. The first phase we sold for $180 per panel. The second phase are $200 per panel. Each panel, you can see, yields 43 kilowatt hours a month. That is an average. We took the life of the farm, 20 years. We averaged the production, and it came out to 43 kilowatt hours per month. So you're guaranteed 43 by owning a panel. The second way you could participate was to buy shares in the farm. We sold shares. They were one share. It was 150 kilowatt hours, and each kilowatt hour was 6 cents per cost per kilowatt hour. So that one had no cost, no money up front. If you purchased your panels, then that had money up front. The minimum share or the minimum participation was either one share or one panel. Made it very simple. And we said, here's the maximum you could buy, 50 to 80%. If you're a commercial customer, no more than 50% of your energy could be bought through community solar. If you're a residential customer, we allowed you to go up to 80%, and this is of your annual consumption. And we simply just went in and looked at their past year's consumption, kind of drew the line at either 50% or 80%, and allowed them to either buy panels or shares up to that percentage. That kept them from overproducing. We don't have to worry about carrying anything forward or anything like that, so they're not a producer. We kept the program length very short, 1 month for residentials. To date, I think we've only had 2 people leave our program. We forced the commercials to stay in for 1 year, and nobody yet has left our program. So next slide. So now I'm going to show you what it looks like. This example here is those that actually wanted to purchase their own panels. And in this case, this customer wanted to purchase 2 panels. So they're getting, I'm sorry. Let me start over again. This is our share model. Look at the wrong one. This is our share model. They wanted to purchase 2 shares. So they wanted to get 300 kilowatt hours per month from our renewable community solar project. You can see without solar, if this customer used on average 1,000 kilowatt hours per month, our current rate is 10.96 cents. So you can see the customer charge plus the energy charge, their total bill without solar would be $123.60. This customer wanted to achieve a 30% renewable energy portfolio standard, so they wanted 300 kilowatt hours. You can still see the same charge at the 10.696 cents, so 109. There's the 6-cent charge that we charged for the 300 kilowatt hours, or $18. Then what we do is we refund them. We get a credit for the cost of our average production. So that's kind of our avoided cost. And when currently today it's 5.44 cents. So they're getting a credit of $16.32. So their total bill, if they wanted to participate and purchase by 2 shares, would be $125.28. So this customer's average monthly bill would increase by $1.68. And we had quite a few people take us up on this because they had to come up with no money down. It simply showed up on their electric bill. It was a minimum impact to their dollars and cents that they paid each month, and a lot of them chose to do this. Next slide. This is where the customer actually wanted to buy and own his own panel. Those that wanted to buy their own panel really had 2 reasons. One, they had the money, and 2, they wanted to get in Uncle Sam's pocket, and they wanted that 30% tax break. So what they did is this customer, again, wants to achieve that 30% renewable energy portfolio. So they wanted to buy 7 panels. So they spent $1,400. They would get 30% of that back when they did their taxes. So if we look at the model again, the first column stayed the same. That's $123.60. That's without solar. Now that they've bought their 7 panels, you can see they don't get charged the 6 cents. That's only for the share customers. Instead, they get 301 kilowatt hours. Remember, 7 times 43 is 301 kilowatt hours. We're giving them credit for 5.44 cents, so they're getting a $16.37 credit. Then what's unique here is what we do charge them because they only own the panels. We own the inverters, we own all the wiring, we own the racking system, and we maintain and insure the entire farm. We charge them 2.77 cents per kilowatt hour. So we still take the 301 kilowatt hours times the 2.77 cents. We charge them $8.34. That's for depreciation, that's for maintenance, and that's for everything that they don't own. That bill comes up to $115.56, which is a savings, a monthly savings of $8.04. You can see on the very bottom right-hand corner, a payback on that is a 9-year payback. So in this model, where you choose to buy the panels, you get a 9-year payback on that investment. Next slide, please. So let's talk about each farm. We have 2 farms. The first farm, believe it or not, after we did the survey and after we did all the education, we sold out 1 megawatts in 5 weeks. It was going like hotcakes. We then went back to our supplier and said, how many more panels can we get? We've sold these out. We'd like to get more. We're also limited on the 10 acres. If you look at the picture, we had 10-acre site. We could only put about 5,000 panels. And so we added another half megawatt, and we sold the additional half megawatts out in 7 weeks. At the end of the project, in 7 weeks, we had 215 residential customers that subscribed. And if you look, half of them bought panels to get the tax benefits. The other half simply signed up for solar shares with no money down. So it ended up being 50-50 split. We only had 20 commercial customers subscribed. We didn't really push this project at all to the commercial customers, and we still haven't. In fact, most of all our projects have all been residential based. You can see there are 4,928 panels. Each panel was 315 watts. The farm cost us about $2.19 million, which is $1.28 a watt, and that's DC voltage. Next slide. This farm has been up for 1 entire year. This is a profile. So part of our package, we get a dashboard from Also Energy. This is simply looking at all 12 months, the production in each month. It's broke out in the colors because you can see that all the different inverters show up. But that's kind of what it looks like in eastern Nebraska is the yield curve right there. At the end, it produced 2.55 gigawatts of electricity, which is exactly on target with what our projection was precisely. And in the first month that we started in March, we didn't feel the production was quite up to par because we had a couple weeks in there that we still weren't quite dialed in and tweaked yet. And so this next year, I'm pretty sure we're going to exceed the 2.55 gigawatts of production. Next slide. Then, because we sold it out so fast, we come up with solar farm number 2. This is the site for solar farm number 2. The city owns 400 acres in our well field, so we've got 400 acres available to put solar farms on. We chose to carve out a small piece of it down there, and we put a 1 megawatt farm on this site. We currently today are about 70% subscribed in the farm. Again, it's 50% are buying panels, 50% are buying shares. So it's a nice mix. I guess it's a good offering when people are like each option as you're doing it. This farm, we wrote a grant, and we got $300,000 from the state. We actually used the $300,000. We're buying 1,500 panels in this farm. Each month, we will take 64,500 kilowatt hours, and we will split that up amongst all our LMI, low to moderate income folks. So anybody that qualifies for the Department of Health and Human Services Energy Assistance Program, and that's either air conditioning or winter heating assistance, we will take those kilowatt hours, divide it amongst them, and actually give them the kilowatt hours. So they're going to see their bill go down slightly each month, and they're in the farm whether they like it or not. We didn't think too many people would argue because their bills are going to go down. And at the end, what we found out was that low to moderate income folks don't have the money. They really aren't interested in renewable energy unless it's free. And so what we've done here is taken the grant and given it to them free. We do have commercial interest. We probably won't sell this farm out. It's got 3,888 panels. They're slightly larger. Instead of the first farm were 315 watts, these are 320 watt panels. You can see the price went down a little bit after a year later. We spent about $1.5 million on this farm. So it's been an exciting program. We absolutely are thrilled to be in the solar energy programs. Our customers are extremely happy. It's probably one of the best goodwill gestures that we have ever done in Fremont. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. So, and I think that's the end of my slides. So look forward to questions and turn it back to you, Nick.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That was fantastic, and may have to queue up a question for you later just asking what was the secret to all your success, because it's just a great story, and you've done a lot of great work there. All right, our next presenter is going to be Betsy from Blue Wave. Betsy, would you still like me to give you control?
Sounds good, thanks. Hi, everyone.
All right.
Happy to be here today.
I am making you the presenter right now.
Great. I hope everyone can hear me and see my screen. I'm going to get this slideshow going.
Can hear you loud and clear. Same thing. Can see the screen very well.
Great. So I work with Blue Wave Solar. We are a company that is classified as a B Corporation on a mission to revolutionize energy with simple, powerful solar solutions. I'll tell you just a little bit about our company, and then I'll dive into a project example that I have of one of the projects that we've developed here in Massachusetts in partnership with a town. So we were founded in 2010. We have 3 original founders, one of which was an environmental activist. He was the Northeast administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency and decided to start Blue Wave. We also have someone who's a real estate developer, and then we have another founder who is comes to us from the banking industry. And so I always like to say the 3 of them together make one perfect human. Please don't tell them I said that. So they started Blue Wave with the idea that they wanted to really start making projects happen. So there was a lot of talk in 2010 about renewable energy, and they really wanted to see some projects go in the ground. And so we started developing solar projects here in Massachusetts. Right now, we've developed north of 135 megawatts of solar here in Massachusetts. Much of that is community solar. In 2014, community solar became a concept in Massachusetts through legislation and regulation. And so we were able to take that original vision of being able to build these projects and provide more access to the benefits of solar to more people, and really turn that into a reality. So our projects up through 2014 were different kinds of public projects for different cities and towns, housing authorities, school districts, and starting in 2014, we were really able to move those forward as community solar projects. So you can see a little bit more about our timeline there. More recently, we've really decided to focus on our community solar services. So because we do community solar development, we had to come up with a way to enroll customers and manage those customers and answer their questions and make sure that we were storing all of their utility data information securely, and all of the things that come along with working with consumers. So we did that, and now because we do that for our own portfolio, we offer those services to other developers and other owners of solar projects. So that is a service that we provide in addition to our development business. I wanted to share just a little bit about how community solar works in Massachusetts, because as everyone has mentioned, it's different in every state. It looks different. It might be called the same thing, and it might have a general concept that is the same, but it really does function differently in every state. So on November 26th of last year, the state of Commonwealth of Massachusetts transformed its solar program from one that was based on the concept of getting solar renewable energy credits, SRECs, to a developer, and the developer then going out and brokering and selling those credits, to one where those credits go automatically to the utility, and then there is a tariff that is paid to the solar developer. So we build this solar farm. The sun shines on that solar farm and generates kilowatt hours. those kilowatt hours are then pumped out onto the grid. We have a meter that's very similar to any meter that you would have at your house, and it runs backwards as we're pumping energy onto the grid. As it runs backward, we're able to generate dollar credits. The utility acknowledges those dollar credits that we've generated and then distributes those dollar credits to our customers based on the allocation schedule, the customer allocation schedule that we provide to the utility. So we provide them with a list of our customers, their utility account numbers, and the percentage share of the solar system that they have subscribed to. I want to point out here that the way that community solar operates in Massachusetts and the way that we function within that is that we offer a subscription model. So there is no purchasing of solar panels as you saw in Fremont. It's really a little bit more like Netflix. You sign up, you pay by the month, and you get your energy credits for that month. I also threw in a slide here about capacity versus energy because I don't know how familiar each of you are with energy markets, and I just wanted to make sure that it's clear what we're talking about when we're talking about a kilowatt hour or a kilowatt. And so 1 kilowatt of solar panels, which operates at 100% efficiency for 1 hour, will generate 1 kilowatt hour. So that is generally the difference between capacity and energy. And I have a note here, that's not possible. No power generation is 100% efficient, and the sun actually doesn't shine all the time. So the efficiency that we get out of solar panels is quite a bit less than 100% simply because there's nighttime, and then also because they're not always oriented in the direction of the sun. There are limited times during the day when they are oriented in the direction of the sun. But my last point here doesn't have, I think you can ask me more about this later. If you would like to, but we call the yield of the project the amount of energy that we get from that project, and it quantifies the amount of energy that we get. So it's in kilowatt hours per kilowatt, and that's over the course of the year. So as others had alluded to, the way that community solar works in Massachusetts, we're allowed to have one large anchor customer, and that large anchor customer can occupy no more or can take the credits from no more than 50% of the project. So we typically sign them up for slightly less than 50%. And then at least 50% have to be small community solar subscribers, which receive no more than 25 kilowatts. Under the former program that was in operation through November 25th of last year, that was 25 kilowatts DC. Under the new program, it's 25 kilowatts AC. So I wanted to talk a little bit about community solar opportunities for municipalities. First, the lease payment. So these solar panels go on land, and we typically, as developers, we don't own the land, we lease the land. In this particular photo, you can see a couple of different projects that we've developed here. This is an array that we built several projects nearby each other in Oxford, Mass. The landowner here is getting a lease payment from Blue Wave for the projects, being able to sit there on their land. And when we partner with a municipal entity, a town, any kind of local jurisdiction, to put community solar on their project, on their property, we do pay a lease payment for that. So I think that's one particular opportunity for privately owned community solar projects on municipal land. In addition, city or town facilities can subscribe as a community solar customer to save money on their electric bills. So that is another form of participation. You don't have to have it in your town. It has to be in your utility service territory, but you can still participate and save money on your electric bills. The next is that if the project is sited within the town limits, not necessarily on municipal land, but anywhere within the town, there's typically a pilot paid to the municipality for that economic development. And so that payment in lieu of taxes that the developer pays to the municipality is certainly beneficial, as additional tax-like revenue. And then finally, community solar projects, we find, typically garner the support of the community. Those benefits of participation are available to anyone that wants to subscribe. And so typically, even if someone doesn't choose to subscribe, they like having that optionality. And so that's something that is, the town can be seen as a leader for that. Next, I thought I'd go into a little bit about one case study that I think highlights a lot of these different components of benefits, potential benefits to cities or towns. So this is a project that we developed on a landfill in the town of Dover, Massachusetts. It is a 1.4 megawatt DC project. It's about 1 megawatt AC. It has 86 subscriptions on it. So this was located, I'll tell you a little bit about Dover. Dover is a small community within commuting distance to Boston. It is an affluent community. It's known for being, just incredibly cute, a really cute little town. And you'll notice that at this particular site, there are trees all around. So you can't see this project from the road or from anyone's house nearby. And I'll just highlight here, if you look at the map in the upper right corner, there's the town of Dover there, and it's pretty close proximity to Boston. And I put a couple of photos from the town here, and you'll see if there's any question about the cuteness of the town, you can see that there's even bunting on the firehouse. So, official, it's a cute town. I also wanted to point out in the lower left corner, I have the logo of AMP Solar Group, which is a company that purchased this project from Blue Wave. So we're typically developing projects, and then at the time that the project is complete and ready to get interconnected, we typically sell the asset to a long-term investor. And that's part of the way that we finance these projects, is we develop them and then sell them, and then we can work on our next project. So one of the next things I wanted to point out about siting is that this particular site is located right on land adjacent to, it's town land, it's a landfill, right adjacent to the trash transfer station. And in addition, it has walking paths. So you can park in the trash transfer station parking lot, and you can enter this walking path that goes around a fence that you can't go inside the fence, but it is all the way around. And you can see that it loops around the left side of this photograph here. And then I have a little bit of a context picture here. You can see where that trash transfer station is. And then it connects, the path connects to this larger area of parks, this park network that's here, the Noanette Woodlands, Cutler Park, and the Hale Reservation. So in terms of siting this, there are a lot of more densely residential areas of Dover, but this was located on a site that is, I think, less desirable for other kinds of economic reasons, next to the trash transfer station, but also in a place where we could provide some public benefit. People who want to park and be able to go walk in the Noanette Woodlands or go for a hike can park there, walk around the solar farm, and head into their out for their day. I also wanted to point out that one thing that we do at all of our projects is we have giant boxes of seed around the office that our development team will go and throw out their seeds of local pollinator plantings. And so we do also have some beehives on some of our sites, and we also do partnerships with agricultural for agricultural uses. So we have some sheep that are actually going to go graze at some of our sites. And we're also building some agricultural canopies this year in partnership with a farmer that we've done work with before, who's going to graze cattle under their canopies that are a little bit more like a parking canopy that will grow grass underneath, and there will be cattle grazing under. So on this particular project, I wanted to point out the customers. So the anchor customer here is the Dover-Sherborne Regional School District. So in addition to using their landfill for an economic development purpose, the solar farm, getting a lease payment for that, getting a payment in lieu of taxes, their school district is the anchor customer and is receiving a discount on their bill credits for that. So in addition to the in addition to that anchor customer, we also have 86 residential and small commercial customers, including 5 subscriptions that subscribe different facilities from the Hale Reservation, which is a natural area that provides children's programming and other kinds of natural programming. So you can see that picture there of the kids jumping into the lake there. I also have a picture of me on here because I am a subscriber of this solar farm, actually. Subscribers receive a 10% discount on their bill credits. So if you see a bill credit on your bill that is $100, you'll get an invoice from Blue Wave for $90. There's no upfront fee, there's no cancellation fee. So we're trying to make it, really as close to that Netflix model as possible. You sign up, you get what you pay for, and if you'd like to leave, if you're moving, if you have another life change that makes you not want to have community solar anymore, you can just let us know and we'll remove you from the project. Trying to think if there's something else I wanted to mention here. Another point that I wanted to make about the siting of the project is that another strong importance, and I'm sure our next speaker can speak to this, is the point of interconnection to the utility grid. So there are certain upgrades that need to happen sometimes for us to plug into the utility grid, or the grid is simply not, the infrastructure can't handle another large generation facility. And so we do carefully find sites that are close to good interconnection points on the grid. So there, in that way, it's more than just finding a landfill somewhere. It has to be like a landfill close to a good interconnection point. I think that's everything for now, and I'm happy to take questions when we're all done here. I wanted to throw a photo that I found when I was looking up photos for the Dover Sherborne Regional School District, and I thought this was a nice ending slide here. I'm all set, and I'll hand it over.
Thank you very much, Betsy. Great presentation. All right, I'm going to take back control here, and then we will bring up our last speaker from Xcel Energy. Let's see here. Eric, you can go off mute if you're ready to go.
All right. Good afternoon. I think I can say for most folks, except for those maybe in Alaska and Hawaii. As we pass the hour, I'll try to go through this pretty quickly to make sure there's enough time for questions and answers. But my name is Eric Van Orden. I work in our Renewables and Choice program. And as I was preparing this, was thinking of the folks on the phone today as being municipalities, but also with the idea in mind that you might be interested for your own facilities, but also that you might be interested in solar and solar gardens for your constituents and the members of the community. That said, I'll try to tailor this conversation more to your facilities. Just quick intro to Xcel Energy. We are in 8 different states. You can see where we are on the map, kind of in the Midwest and east of the Rocky Mountains, which fortunately puts us in a nice place for wind production, being east of the Rocky Mountains. And so we are and have been for more than a decade one of the top wind energy providers, but also we're excited about all renewable energy and moving and transitioning to a cleaner energy future with a lot of leading efforts in energy efficiency, some different innovative technologies, and certainly solar is part of that mix as well. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, that leading the clean energy transition, at the end of last year, 2018, we made an announcement that we have a goal of reaching 80% carbon emission reduction by 2030, and then ambitions by 2050 to have a system that is zero carbon and 100% carbon free. An exciting move. We've done a lot in the past 10 to 15 years, a lot of that with broad investments for all customers, and at the same time also customer choice programs that help to reduce the emissions profile. So I would expect to see a lot more investments in clean energy in the future, and we need your support as customers and communities to continue down this path. Next slide, please. So this slide is a bit of an eye chart, but I think whether it comes to solar gardens or just renewable programs overall, there are a number of different ways to slice and dice it in different models. And some of that is because there are different customer needs. And so as I look at this table is something that's on our website at xcelenergy.com/renewables with the local information by state when you pull down the upper left tab. But generally, there are a handful of different renewable programs we offer in addition to the standard energy mix. Wanted to call out, I think, when I mentioned kind of what customers are looking for, I think a couple of things that we try to put together with our renewable portfolio is different types of energy, whether it's wind or solar or other renewables. Also, as we understand it, customers have different interests in it being on-site in the state, or as we talk about solar gardens and solar community today, is in the community, kind of geographically closer to maybe where you drive to and from work or to the grocery store and things like that. So that is something that's across this portfolio of programs ranges from putting solar on your home to being out into the community and also maybe being further out, but still within the state and service territory. Next slide, please. So another piece that was kind of at least hinted at in some of the other presentations was renewable energy credits and the marketing and messaging around the renewable energy that was being produced. This gets a little wonky, but I think it is important to share as you consider your renewable program options. Looking at this diagram, all power plants, whether they're thermal or renewable, they all create energy. But only renewable energy creates renewable energy and renewable energy credits, or RECs. These are tradable certificates that show that renewable energy production that shows the renewable energy production to ensure that both the users and the producers aren't over or undercounting for their clean energy compliance or goals. The ownerships of these RECs do have implications, as I mentioned, on how you message your renewable energy commitment. Next slide, please. So in our portfolio of programs that aren't available in all states, but are available in some of our states with larger populations, Minnesota and Colorado in particular, and I'll touch on the variances between the programs between Minnesota, Colorado, and Wisconsin in a bit, with a focus on solar gardens. But this shows a little bit of the programs that are offered where the customer can claim the renewable energy credits and where they cannot. And so when you are claiming those RECs and participating in those programs to the left side, you can publicly message and market things like, I use X% renewable energy, or I offset my carbon emissions with solar energy, things along those lines. While the programs to the right, you can suggest that you're supporting renewable energy, but not necessarily using it. So that's part of the purpose of the RECs, both for market mechanisms to encourage the installation of renewable energy, but also from a Federal Trade Commission perspective, a way to keep things honest. Next slide, please. So to dive a little deeper into solar gardens or community solar, this is a model I think that was showed on a couple of different presentations earlier, and this is one of the models that we offer at Xcel Energy, such that the subscribers are getting a bill credit from Xcel Energy, and meanwhile paying a third-party developer for their subscription to receive energy. Meanwhile, kind of behind the scenes, the solar energy and the renewable energy credit claims are going to really all customers as we work towards our 100% carbon-free emission goal, both for us and for our energy users and customers. And also with that, that helps us to achieve our goals. And because we are all part of the energy system and energy grid, we can all be proud to use that increasingly clean energy. But meanwhile, depending on what the third party is offering for the dollar amount for the subscription costs, the participant in the solar garden or subscriber of that garden may or may not see some sort of financial savings, but it is something that you might be able to hedge your risks or lock in your rates in some way or another to see some sort of financial value to it. Next slide, please. So to share a little bit more of kind of the nuances and differences between even within Xcel Energy, the 3 different programs that we offer in 3 different states. One, Minnesota is currently the largest solar garden provider in the country. Meanwhile, in Colorado, we were the first investor-owned utility to offer solar gardens, and then more recently, we offered in Wisconsin the Solar Connect community model. And those are kind of the terms we use and trademarks of Solar Rewards Community, which you'll see are both in Minnesota and Colorado third-party programs, while in Wisconsin, Solar Connect Community is Xcel Energy owned and offered to customers. The main thing I think to call out in this slide is the subscription cost for the 2 gardens that are 2 programs in Minnesota and Colorado that are third-party offered. That amount and that subscription cost is set by the garden developer. But across the board for all programs, the bill credit is something that's, I wouldn't call it necessarily fixed, but it is public and there is a methodology to it that you can know what that is for whoever you are, whatever type of customer class you are. For the Wisconsin program, you can see there that you can kind of do some of the math where you see the bill credit amount between 6.9 and 7.4 cents per kilowatt hour. That's the bill credit and reduction on your bill in exchange for making an investment in the Solar Connect community installation of $1,600 per kilowatt hour upfront or kilowatt upfront. Another thing on this table, as I mentioned, the renewable energy credits may be something to consider depending on your goals as an organization or a government agency. The Minnesota and Colorado programs the renewable energy credits are claimed by the utility and claimed on behalf of all customers, as opposed to the Wisconsin program where the renewable energy credits are retired on behalf of the customer. So that customer participating in the Wisconsin program can make those claims of I'm X% or I'm using X kilowatts of solar energy. Another thing I think that was mentioned kind of in the design of some of the other programs is the mix of customer segments. Again, kind of acknowledging that maybe you are looking for solar programs for your facilities as a municipality. Maybe this isn't totally relevant, but did want to note that in Colorado, we do have specific targets and carve-outs for low-income customers, ranging from single-family homes to housing authorities and housing complexes. So that may be something that's of interest if you are considering how solar gardens fit into your community and your constituency for them potentially participating in solar gardens. Next slide, please. So hopefully I caught up on a little bit of time to leave some time for question and answers, but just to wrap up, I'm really excited about the work I do every day with renewable energy, offering choices to customers, while at the same time, we at Xcel Energy are leading the way to cleaner energy through a number of different solutions, from universal renewables that are part of our entire system to many of the customer choices I rattled off earlier, from on-site solar to solar gardens to green pricing programs and more. With that, they are offered up to a mix of homeowners, renters, businesses, government agencies, and we're trying to tailor all of these different options with features that fit the needs of all of our customer segments. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Eric. All right, I'm going to pull up just kind of a final slide here about Q&A. Real quick, just to like to thank all of our presenters for their presentations. I thought they were just packed full of knowledge and resources when it comes to community solar. Kick it off to some questions for the presenters. Feel free to just kind of go off mute right now and speak up as you see fit. But I think I just want to start off with, realizing that our targeted audience here is local governments. from, your perspective, whether you're working for kind of research or industry organization, a developer, or a utility, what's kind of one key takeaway or key message that you would like to give to local governments as they consider how they can potentially be a partner in a community solar array, whether it's as a partial off-taker or potentially identifying some sites, maybe it's through community engagement? What would be kind of one key takeaway? And whoever would like to kind of step up first, by all means, go ahead.
This is Betsy. I'll start with that. I would just say my key takeaway is participate. It's like if there's a way that you can, work with, we're a third-party developer. We sort of take a lot of the weight off of the municipality to do a lot of the work themselves. If that's the level of effort you're willing to put in, work with a third-party developer. If you want to operate your own program like Fremont, go for it. I think there's a lot of benefits to doing this. There's a lot of economic benefits, local pride benefits to doing this. And I think that we see sometimes some municipalities saying, we're feeling a little overwhelmed and we're just not gonna, there's a lot going on here and we're just gonna let it lie. We're not gonna participate because it seems like too much to get into. And those are the towns now in Massachusetts that are starting to feel like a little left behind. So I think, dig in and get to know this. And I think that there are a lot of different benefits for municipalities.
And Eric here with Oak Sale Energy. I'll kind of piggyback on that and, acknowledge I didn't go into great detail with what Betsy called out as kind of the interconnection considerations, but I think with that and with the question, how you framed it, I mean, there are a lot of different ways for municipalities to get involved with solar gardens, and certainly participation is one piece of that, but there are land considerations and also just strategic planning and coordination for with hopefully a utility like Xcel Energy or others that are trying to help to align with your goals for carbon reductions or renewable energy installations and participation and things like that. So I think with all of those different opportunities to engage, I would just encourage you to reach out to your utility to learn more about both participation, but also what other opportunities are there for alignment as we even think about what the future more renewables look like.
Excellent. Thank you both. Okay, we actually have quite a few questions here. We're definitely not going to be able to get to all of them. We will send out an email probably early next week sometime with a link to the webinar recording, a slide deck, and then I think I will feature just some written questions and then answers as well to some of the questions that we have here. But we do have a couple that are specifically asking about LMI and how do you conduct that type of outreach? How do you structure it so there are benefits to the LMI communities? If anybody wants to kind of take a crack at answering that question and just talking a little bit more about LMI engagement in the offerings.
This is Brian. Of all the community presentations we did, LMI is a tough nut to crack. I mean, those folks didn't really show up. They just don't feel that community solar is within their means. And so I guess we kind of took the bull by the horn and got a grant, and we're just going to make them a participant in our next farm. So it's tough. It's very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And Eric here, through the program designs, we've done a number of different things from carve-outs and minimums that certain solar gardens must have a minimum of low income participation. We've also done 100% gardens that are 100% for low income customers, and probably a couple of other tweaks and adjustments in between. But it is something, I think we've had some great success at, and has been something though that we've been deliberately targeting and making sure that they have options and are enrolling.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there are a number of different ways in program design to do it. But I do, as I understand it, sometimes offering just straight free energy doesn't work out in the long term. It's expensive and unsustainable. So I think in some way or another, participants can receive some financial benefits, but they're not totally off the hook for the long term.
Okay, great. Brian, real quick question for you, specifically kind of about the LMI. For the, I think you mentioned DHHS program for the kind of energy assistance, so the LMI can partake in the solar program. About how many customers do you anticipate being able to take advantage of those benefits?
That's a good question. Yeah. It's an automatic download. So because we're the utility, we automatically download the energy assistance folks each month. That's going to range between $400 and $500 a month.
Okay. Wow. Excellent. That's a great impact that you're having there.
Yeah. Isn't it though?
Yeah. Question for Betsy real quick. Since you have a site on a landfill, but that's also adjacent to walking paths where the community is kind of invited to be very close by, have you had any issues with vandalism or people throwing rocks or anything on the panels?
No, we really haven't. Yeah, we don't have that kind of, we typically don't see that kind of issue. A lot of our projects are not hidden, they're not, we try to shield them from view, but we also don't necessarily hide them. And I can't say that we've really had that problem before. We have more issues with squirrels chewing our wires than we do with vandalism.
Right. Well, the squirrels are the vandals in that case, I guess. Can't really do much to control them. I think we're going to go with one final question for Brian again. And if/when someone kind of drops off their share, they decide to move on, how is that cost absorbed? Is there kind of a wait list that person is just replaced very quickly? Does the municipal utility have to pay for a certain time until it's filled?
So we have two programs, one for the share and one for the purchase of panels. Under the share program, we take them back. We do have a waiting list, and so we'll fill it in. If we don't have a waiting list, we'll hold on to it until we get somebody, and then we automatically fit them in the farm. On the purchase program, those that have purchased panels, they can sell them to their neighbor. They can give them away. They can. We don't care as long as that panel goes to somebody else's name. If they cannot sell it, we do have a repurchase program. We simply deduct the 30% they would have gotten from the IRS, straight line depreciated out for 20 years, and we'll buy the panel back from them.
Okay, great. Sounds like you've kind of thought of everything in terms of that program. Really great. Great work there.
One thing you have to be is completely flexible, like Naveed said. If you don't have a really flexible, and the other presenters outline great flexible programs, you've got to make it so simple that nobody can say no.
I think that's probably a great way to end this webinar. Be flexible if you're thinking about community solar, but also if you're a local government, definitely get involved and consider ways that you can get involved, whether it's as an off-taker, as potentially identifying some sites, if nothing else, being a trusted voice to the community and trying to increase that community engagement and interest in a community solar array. With that, I would like to thank all of our presenters one more time. I think they did a great job. It was certainly an hour and a half full of knowledge and resource sharing. As I said, we will be following up with an email newsletter with a recap of the webinar, hopefully some questions and answers there, recordings and slides sometime early next week. With that, I hope you have a great afternoon, and until the next SolarSmart webinar, have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.